Hello everyone, welcome to Anime No Mi, and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. Bartolomeo is a character who has a great obsession for Luffy, and once he joined his Grand Fleet, or at least helped assemble it, Bartolomeo became even more excited, and has now since done everything he can so that his Captain Luffy can become King of the Pirates. During one of these adventures, we saw that Bartolomeo had actually conquered one of Shanks' territory, which made the Yonko very angry with him, because this would bring down his level of fame in the world, and would cause Shanks to lose credibility in the world. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the relationship Bartolomeo has regarding Luffy, what feats Bartolomeo may have already done on behalf of his captain, and what Shanks' goals is going to be about this person these days. But before we dive into the video, if you're new to the channel, or even if you've been around for a bunch of episodes, we'd be absolutely honored if you consider leaving us a like, or even subscribing with a comment letting us know what you thought of the video. It really motivates us to make more content and helps us out. And if you want to help us out in a bigger way, consider sharing the video or the channel with a friend. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So friends, we're going to start at a time before the time skip, before Luffy even really begins to take on what we would consider much more powerful enemies. In a confrontation with Buggy, we see that Luffy is arrested and had his head in the stocks and would have had his life taken in public just like Goldie Roger. But during this event, where it really could have been the end of our protagonist, Bartolomeo was in the crowd and he was impressed by this spectacle. And after having been saved by some really unexpected lightning, this made Bartolomeo all the more impressed by Luffy. Since that moment, Bartolomeo has followed all the news about Luffy, and the rest of his crew for that matter. And even during the great confrontation that took place in Marineford, knowing that Luffy was able to take on and at least face off against 3 admirals and the entire Marine organization, this raised Bartolomeo's admirations to even greater heights. And Bartolomeo didn't look at Luffy as just some other pirate, but a great pirate who would, in fact, change the world. And after being moved by Luffy's actions, he decided to leave his position as head of the Mafia he ran and started a life of piracy. When he learned that Luffy's brother's fruit was being used as a prize in a tournament, he even traveled to Dressrosa to acquire the Mera Mera no Mi after winning the tournament, because then afterwards he could deliver Ace's fruit to Luffy in order to become someone that he could trust and be recruited for his crew. During the tournament that was taking place in Dressrosa, Bartolomeo just heard a man criticizing Luffy, which made him very angry with this competitor. So Bartolomeo crushed the man with his barrier powers. After having this competitor immobilized, Bartolomeo then cut out his tongue, showing that he could not stand it if anyone dared say anything disrespectful about Luffy. And in this way, he showed an immense loyalty to Luffy, who would not even know of his existence and didn't even know him yet. But even though Bartolomeo didn't receive any recognition that he desired from Luffy yet, it didn't cause him to become discouraged. In fact, it motivated him even more so that he could finally get Luffy to notice him. And when he finally first met Luffy, he could barely speak and fainted several times. And after a while, he finally managed to gain the confidence to talk to the young pirate. But he couldn't look at him, otherwise he would just faint again. Bartolomeo tells Luffy of his great admiration for him, and even says that he wishes that Luffy would become the King of the Pirates, making Luffy recognize him and consider him as an ally and somebody that he may be able to trust. During this conversation, Pirate then walks up and confronts Luffy and Bartolomeo, and the pirate says that neither of them would get Ace's devil fruit. But Bartolomeo jumps up to fight the man, showing that he is willing to do anything and fight anyone for the potential future Pirate King. After everything that happened in Dressrosa, in which Luffy was able to defeat Doflamingo and managed to do so with Law's help, Bartolomeo was among the 7 pirates that were willing to pledge allegiance to Luffy and the Straw Hats, wanting to join the crew to sail together so that they could all help him find the One Piece and do it together. But Luffy rejects the proposal of these pirates because he didn't want to have too big a crew, because it'd be difficult to command all the pirates that would be a part of it. He then accepts them as fleet friends, creating the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, which were independent pirates who will follow Luffy's commands when they're needed. And Luffy tells them that he doesn't really wish to be the most powerful pirate in the world. Rather, he wishes to become the King of the Pirates and be the freest person in the world. And from these words, they all understood his motivations and agreed with Luffy, serving Luffy only when he needs their help, which would allow these pirates to act freely to fulfill their own personal dreams. These actions only increased Bartolomeo's respect for Luffy, and he swore allegiance to Luffy and gave Luffy and the other Straw Hats a ride to Zou on his ship before separating from the Straw Hats, promising to honor the crew's name. Bartolomeo was also extremely happy when Luffy thanked him for the ride while referring to him by his name, and this made him very excited about Luffy's words. So Bartolomeo Bartolomeo then says goodbye to Luffy and was very emotional when he did so. So this obsession that Bartolomeo has for Luffy has existed from the moment he saw him and has come all the way through Dressrosa, even until our current time where the Straw Hats have been in Wano. Bartolomeo helps fight for the same goals, and he's shown loyalty to Luffy several times, one of the most memorable moments being when Doflamingo put a price on Luffy's head during a survival game. And Bartolomeo did not turn against Luffy, even though there was an extremely high value put on Luffy's head. And what's more, not only did he refuse to hunt Luffy for the reward, he allied himself with the Straw Hats to help defeat the Doflamingo pirates so that Luffy could get and defeat Doflamingo. And Bartolomeo also realized that by helping them, he put himself in danger in a much greater sense, because if he could not defeat Doflamingo, there would be larger problems, because Joker, as he was known in the organization, was an ally of Kaido's. So confronting or even supporting any kind of action against Doflamingo would mean that they were also be challenging an Emperor of the Sea. So this mission of defeating Doflamingo had to be completed perfectly in order for Luffy to acquire great fame in the world. During Bartolomeo and Gladius's arena competition, their enemies threw projectiles in Luffy's direction, and Bartolomeo initially thought that Luffy had been hit and was incredibly sad because he thought Luffy had just lost his life. But once he saw that Luffy wasn't in fact harmed, he bounced right back and became incredibly happy again. Bartolomeo was even shown that he was willing to protect Nico Robin, taking hits that would have hit Robin, showing that his loyalty is not just at Luffy, but to all the Straw Hats, although he is more dedicated when his goal is to save or when it comes to Luffy. So because of his obsession with Luffy, Bartolomeo has studied everything about the Straw Hats, knowing really everything about them, their powers, techniques, everything that's made them powerful, although some secrets still do remain hidden from him. For instance, he didn't actually initially know Sogeking's true identity, and he didn't know about his identity until he met Usopp, causing him to finally recognize and put together that Sogeking was actually Usopp. But let's be real, this is the kind of comedy we love in One Piece. Recently, Bartolomeo has declared a rivalry against Shanks, showing that he may not actually know that Luffy was friends with Shanks since he was a kid, thus causing a really big problem for Shanks and his crew. In the cover story of chapter 875, we see Bartolomeo has taken over one of Shanks' territory, and is even taken to burning down the Yonko's Jolly Roger, and places Luffy's flag on the spot to show that the place now belongs to Luffy. When Shanks learned of this action, he began to hunt Bartolomeo down so that he wouldn't get away with it. Now, even though Bartolomeo is a part of Luffy's fleet, because of this action, it actually has now interfered with something that a lot of us fans have wanted to see, and that's the reunion of Shanks and Luffy. In chapter 1054, we see Shanks is extremely close to the country of Wano, being so close in fact that even his crew members are starting to wish to go to Wano so they can see Luffy, because they just want to see how strong Luffy has become and how far he's grown. But Shanks says he has to postpone this event because they need to find and defeat Bartolomeo in order to regain their reputation. Because if they don't do something about it, the whole world is going to look at this as a weakness, something that a Yonko cannot afford to happen. Among the fandom, Bartolomeo may be considered one of the more annoying pirates in the world of One Piece, and during his formal presentation when he was introduced in Dressrosa, Bartolomeo was considered the #1 pirate that we kind of wish would disappear because of, the overall fanboy kind of vibe he has. A lot of the ire that Bartolomeo has also gotten is that it seems like he's kind of going around and provoking people at times for no reason. But we've also seen that when Bartolomeo is kind of pushed out of his, kind of fanboy image, he's almost like another person with this entirely huge anger. But Bartolomeo has also shown that he really doesn't care what other people think of him. And during the confrontation in Dressrosa, he says that popularity among the public is the least of his worries, not even really caring that he's made an enemy of the Don Quixote pirates. Despite such a destructive nature, he can also contain his murderous rage to some extent, restraining himself from trying to take the life of an enemy. And this is due to the limitation that he had in the tournament because of the rules. But if also Luffy asked for something like that, he would also contain his rage because his captain asked him so. Because for all the darkness that Bartolomeo might have in his past, he considers Luffy someone worthy of respect, and he would follow any order made by him or any of the other Straw Hats, but especially if it was made by Luffy, because Bartolomeo is really, when you think about it, still a very good supporter and subordinate of Luffy, even if he kind of goes and creates mischief when he really shouldn't. And it seems like one of those things that he maybe shouldn't have done, even if it was for Luffy, was confronting Shanks. Something that, although it would give Luffy some fame and some name recognition out there, it's also going to create some friction with another Yonko. Because of his actions, Bartolomeo is now a target of Shanks, and Shanks, it's probably not going to take him long to find him, and the two are going to get into some kind of confrontation. A confrontation in which, actually, Luffy could could end up emerging to prevent Shanks from taking his partner's life. Because as we know, Shanks could easily take Bartolomeo's life if he wants to. I mean, even with the barrier fruit and everything else, if Shanks is able to communicate with somebody with Haki off the coast of Wano, talking to, somebody on land, for more information, see our leak video on chapter 1055. But if Shanks is that powerful with his Haki, doesn't matter what kind of barrier Barto puts up, it's gonna go down. But this also may provide a really interesting narrative point where we will actually get to see a reunion between Luffy, Shanks, Bartolomeo, and really get a nice resolution. But it's only gonna be in the next chapters where we really are gonna find out the real outcome of this meeting. And it's likely that they're probably not gonna have this take too long because Shanks has this uncanny ability to be able to show up wherever he wants. But this may also mean that when he meets Bartolomeo, it also means that Luffy might need a couple of chapters to get on his way so that they can kind of intersect. But however the story ends up playing out, we're gonna see that Shanks may need to give up defeating Bartolomeo. This is also gonna create our great opportunity, one that we as fans have waited for a very long time, where Shanks is gonna be able to start talking to Luffy about the dangers that are yet to come, and also about finding the One Piece, because we did get that great line recently in the manga where he said that it is now time to go find the One Piece. So we know any which way it goes, great events are yet to come. So with all that said, friends, we'd love to know what you think about it. Do you think that this is something that is gonna lead us on to our next meeting, and Bartolomeo's kind of target on his back from Shanks is gonna now facilitate the meeting between Shanks and him? Or could Bartolomeo actually be in the neighborhood? Because we know that he's now taken over things and may have even just heard about where Luffy was in Wano, so Bartolomeo could be on his way there. So could it be something where Straw Hats are heading out and now we kind of just happenstancely run into it? Also, how do you think, things will play out if Shanks gets to Bartolomeo before Luffy can intervene? Let us know what you think in the comments below. So my friends, as we wrap up the video, I want to thank you all so much for watching the video up to the very end. Be sure you comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. And also, since you made it this far, why don't you give us a like or hit that red subscribe button before you head out to take on the rest of your day. I hope to see you all in our next video, and let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.